Hi everyone, it's Ren here. I hope you're doing well. In this video I'm going to be talking a little bit about the topic of self-expression, expressing oneself well, precisely, being able to convey one's thoughts from my experience. Because sometimes I get comments in my videos asking for advice as regards how to manage to express oneself, how to, just put words on things in a way that speaks to people. And what these questions made me realize is that it's not necessarily easy for people to do that, not only because, let's say, of considerations of shyness, but also considerations of not being quite sure whether they would manage to actually express anything like that. And so I would like to give my perspective to maybe, help people in the future, or help them get a bit more confidence, have a vision towards managing to do that, and maybe dare start their own YouTube channel, or, for their life in general. I think that's quite useful. Now, I'm not the person who is the most apt to give training in that, because it's not my area of expertise at all. All I can say is that I have managed with a certain amount of effort to become more comfortable talking to a camera and sort of expressing thoughts in a way that seems to be more or less understood by people. It doesn't often happen that what I talk about is completely misunderstood, so it must be kind of clear, I guess. And I think that I have made improvements in the clarity of my expression. In my videos, I could be way more structured, way more to the point, way more economical with how I convey my content. This would come at the expense of spontaneity, given that I just do one take videos. I just talk and with an outline in my mind of what I want to talk about. So I think that spontaneity and authenticity weighs heavier in the balance for me than edited absolute concision. That's one decision. But it also comes from my confidence that I can more or less ride a topic and come out unscathed, So how did I manage to become somewhat comfortable about, talking publicly, and how did I become better at expressing my thoughts? Well, so I guess there's a few issues here. So the question about being comfortable talking to a camera, I think it's just age to an extent. The fact that I'm older, so I'm less easily impressed by this kind of thing. The fact that I was never extremely introverted on the extroversion introversion spectrum. I've always been somewhat introverted, but not particularly introverted, so I guess that's helped. Now, another thing is that I have done theatre. I've become involved in theatre when I was in Ireland, and even though I wasn't acting, because I think that I would have been almost too terrified to do, I was doing some writing for plays, so I was involved in the production of the plays that I was writing at the college level, at the student level, and then I directed some plays as well, and that required a certain level of confidence, trusting that I could do it. And so you need to challenge yourself, get out of your comfort zone a little bit, and I guess I did that more or less successfully for a while, because what's really important to know here, at least in my case, is that if you push yourself out of your comfort zone and realize that you do well, which is going to happen because you're good, you're going to become more confident about redoing it, and in the process you're going to become more and more confident about doing it. And so for me, the first big test was daring to share what I was writing with people. So it's not even really at the stage of talking yet. It's really at the stage of writing. So I was writing lots of poetry and plays and stuff, and I was kind of keeping it for myself at first, but eventually started sharing it with people. And that kind of broke a first wall, I think, because I became used from that moment to become an object of scrutiny. And what I'm guessing is that for some people, it's not a very comfortable thing to be an object of scrutiny, and it's usually is not for introverts, because I probably have some, like, I don't want to say narcissistic tendencies, but you know, I have observed in myself a certain enjoyment of catching attention, at least for a while, for a limited span of time, that I ideally want to jump in and jump out of, like, whenever I want to. I guess, like, maybe I have an advantage at that level. Maybe having had a super extroverted dad that I sometimes mimic is probably, my dad is INFJ and I can mimic him. I have that example, so maybe that helps me as well. But one interesting thing about having dared to share my stuff with other people is just how it happened. So I'm going to go a little bit into the story of how it happened. This is relevant to the wider topic, because if we're going to be talking about being comfortable in, talking to a camera, so displaying oneself and talking in an eloquent, more or less eloquent or precise fashion, I think one of the key aspects is being okay with being under scrutiny. And so that's how it started for me, sharing my writings. So I did it the introverted way, maybe, and why do I think that it was very interesting in my case? Because it was paradoxical, but at the same time worked very well. Now, I don't think it's going to work for everyone, because now I'm going to tell you what it was. I started showing my stuff when I moved to Ireland at age 19. I started showing stuff at age 20. And from then onwards, I just was showing it all the time. People are like, often they think that it requires even more courage to communicate or to write stuff and show it to people when you do it in a language that is not your native language. They think that it requires more courage and more effort because you have, instead of having a series of challenges, you have that series of challenges plus the linguistic challenge. And in a way it's true, and I wouldn't necessarily have contradicted that. But deep inside I've always known that for me it was quite the opposite. And I don't know if there are, well, I'm sure there are lots of non-native English speakers in the people who watch my videos. Maybe they will relate to this. But when you present stuff to an audience that is a native language audience in a language that is not your own, it frees you of a certain amount of pressure. And I think that this is true even to this day. To this day, when I make videos, when I speak, because imagine that my tongue slips, right? Imagine that I say, and it happens, and I've noticed, in the past, watching videos and just messing up a word, but imagine just even saying something very silly because I was nervous. You see, it can happen, and it can be a terrifying thing, and it would be for me. But I can always say, or rather, I can always expect people to think, well, after all, he's not a native speaker, so there's nothing too shocking about it, People in the end will always still primarily think, well, he speaks well and occasionally he slips, that's normal. So it's because it's all about whether you manage to deal with the pressure that you're putting on yourself by projecting what people might think or not. The less pressure you have, the more likely it will be easy to display, to show yourself, to put yourself out there. So in a way, the language barrier for me was a protection. It was a way for me to say, well, and it still is, a way for me to say, well, whenever my expression is not ideal, hopefully people would think that it is because I'm not a native speaker. And at the time when I was showing my works, that sounds a bit serious. Let's say my pieces of writing, I was just thinking, well, people will at least say, wow, okay, like it's not great, but it's really well written for a non-native speaker, So it's very contradictory in a way, because it's almost like I was lacking ambition, but actually I was very ambitious. I was showing lots of stuff to lots of people, very ambitious conceptually, but always kind of comfortable showing it, because even though criticism has never been easy for me to take, and you can trust me with that, I knew that in a way I'd always have this, like, I'm not a native speaker protection for the maintenance of the sustenance of my self-esteem. And in this whole realm of projections that I had to deal with, that proved helpful. But in any case, I decided to make that move around age 20, and so then, like, some of my plays were performed by the Drama Society in my university in Ireland, and I was involved, like I said, on the production side, on the directing side, and so I just became more comfortable with, like, being under scrutiny in a way. And from that moment onwards, I always was, because I continued to write and to show my stuff, and it's just something that you get used to. It's all a matter of getting used to, and now, like, when I record a video, I'm not saying that I'm like the most comfortable of all time, especially at the start. If you check my early videos, you'll notice that I was a lot more nervous. But I was thinking, this is going to get better. As an INFJ, you have a long-term vision, so you're able to contemplate the different steps. You're starting at a point. The crucial idea here is not to think in terms of the point, right? The performance at a single moment, is to think in terms of the first performance as a springboard to how far you can go. So always look at what you're doing from the perspective of how much better it can get, because it's going to get better. If it were going to get worse, no one would record any videos. It'd be too depressing. But the fact that it's going to get better almost necessarily, if you look at it that way, it can be actually very empowering, I think. So that's the first section that I wanted to talk about, about being comfortable in your own skin, about being comfortable being on display. As for the elocution, as for the phrasing, as for the expression, the clarity, the precision, now, I'm not saying that I'm the ideal of that. I'm aware that I am not. But I guess I have a base level of that, which, I'm assuming that I do, because otherwise I don't think people would bother following me. So I must have a base level of that. Now, where does it come from? So, again, it's connected to the comfortable position of being in the public eye. Because as I'm sure all of you have experienced before, you might be the most eloquent, smart, quick, biting, repartee person ever. If you're nervous, you're going to start slipping, you're going to start mumbling, you're going to start stuttering, it's going to happen. And you're going to come across as someone who's not quite as eloquent as she or he really is. So it's all a matter of, first of all, being comfortable. Again, check out my first videos. You'll notice I'm not quite as comfortable as I am now, and this has an impact on the content, on how I deliver it. You're more, imagine that you have an internal structure of what you want to say. So you approach the video, you start talking. If you're nervous, not only are you going to make those mistakes that I talked about, but you're also going to forget what you wanted to say in the next minutes, because you'll be focusing too much of your attention on not trying to be too nervous. You'll be too self-conscious, and so that will impact the structure of what you talk about. And the structure of what you talk about is very connected to the overall eloquence, because eloquence and expression, clarity of expression, always expresses itself within a broader architecture, broader structure, right? So it's important to be structured, to be eloquent, because you know when you're going to start and you know when you're going to finish, and you know what to pack in between the start and the finish. So that's one thing. But then there's also practice. There's also practice. And I'm not going to lie to you, but in my case, it's dependent a lot on practice. Now, I never practiced that because I wanted to make videos on YouTube or be a speaker, because I'm notoriously averse to public speaking. I hate it. I hate conferences. I had to do many when I was doing my university doctoral research, and never a fan, you know, just proper introvert in this case. But, you know, obviously the conferences, these different things, they helped me also grow as a public speaker, at least as a germinating, even though recalcitrant public speaker. But still, like, most of it has been about practice. And what do I mean by this? I mean that, and it's hard to believe, but I went through a phase, and I still go through phases like these days, because I write philosophy and I write fiction. I often try to play in my mind, or even like literally verbalize sentences, you know, ideas, expressing ideas. So I take an idea that I have, and I spend by myself sometimes up to an hour just trying to explicate it to myself in my own room, or, you know, and just talk and start mastering the language better. It was also within a perspective of mastering the English language better for my own use, but it ended up helping me to become more precise, because the words, they just come quicker, because I'm so used to using them in my little exercises, which to me are not really exercises, they're pleasurable anyway. So I would take like a particular topic and I would just talk about it, because that sharpens my philosophical critical spirit. It gives me ideas for philosophy and fiction, and it gives me a sense of like just becoming better at expressing myself. So a lot of practice. There's no particular rule, just talk and talk and talk, and imagine that you have like some imaginary audience when you're talking, and get used to the weirdness of talking to yourself, and eventually it works. I mean, I'm sure that being a fan of literature and doing a lot of reading helped me for vocabulary purposes as well, so that helps, but it's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight, you know, it happens over a series of years. But it really, really helps, you know. Read, don't just watch videos, read, because you're going to integrate the words and you're going to remember them eventually. And practice, speak, if that's what you want to do. And you'll become more comfortable inevitably. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. It's getting long now, so I'm going to leave you, but I will be seeing you very soon. All right, have a lovely day, guys. Bye.